Okay, and welcome to the MSP Insights hosted by Sharpie. I've got one of my favourite guests of all time, a dear friend of mine, Mr. James Bergl of Dado fame, and is sporting some new whiskers there, Jimmy. How you doing?
Hey, Sharpie, thank you very much for having it. It's completely reciprocated. One of my favorite humans as well, and certainly enjoyed a lot of the time, business and pleasure, and on the golf course that we've had over the last few years as well. Yes, a couple of years in the MSP industry has grown some grays, so I'm proudly sporting them today.
Well, the podcast is actually called On Par, and it's about MSP insights, which we're going to get to. But considering I know that you've had a little bit of time out, and congratulations on your new baby, Elle. But you've been practicing your golf, so talk me through that. So how's it all coming along?
It's been good. I've been trying to get out 2 to 3 times a week to work on the swing, and I've finally gotten to my teens. It's a little bit difficult juggling the baby and golf, but I've managed to be reasonably effective with that.
So obviously you should have some time off, and we won't pry into the fact that you'll be re-entering the workforce sometime in the foreseeable future, whenever that is. But what I was keen to have a talk to you today about is the fact that you've had, I won't call it a luxury, but you've crafted out the ability to be able to be in the MSP industry and meet with, incredibly large amount of business owners over the years. So we were hoping to maybe pick your brains on some of the best, the drivers or the tips and the wins, maybe some really shitty things that you wouldn't want to do. And then we'll eke those out. And then after that, I'd really like to dive down into and having a bit of a philosophical discussion with you about your management style, something where you and I are both quite passionate about. So, along the way, obviously the last couple of years has been really different for the MSPs, but any particular big wins, maybe systems integration or adoption of new technologies that you've seen in MSPs over the last few years that have, we can give on to our other listeners. I am remarkably putting you on the spot there, so potentially I could give you an example. So one thing that we adopted at Base 2, which is the MSP that I've sold, and that team, we all sat down philosophically and decided to really go after not blaming a person, but blaming the process.
Yeah, I think that's really relevant, and what I would describe a lot of the best in practice MSPs have been doing is looking at how do you optimize, how do you really optimize your business so that you're driving efficiencies from beginning to end of everything that you do. And I think if we just start kind of reverse engineer the question and say, like, what is it that we're looking to do, and what do the KPIs look like in our business to be successful? Whether it's what's our EBITDA, what's our technician utilization rate, etc. It's really good to understand. We can do this in peer groups. We can do it from organizations that specialize in helping MSPs to understand what's working, what's not. But driving true net profit in your business, not just top line, but bottom line profit after you've actually been paying for all of your staff, been paying for all the mess ups, in paying for someone to sit on the phone to support to get problems fixed. And what I would say the effective ones are doing is really having a grasp of what are the true costs of their business, and actually looking to tweak and optimize them. So if you're looking at selling managed services, what are the tools and the softwares that you've got included as part of that platform? If you've got particular solutions you're using that are actually profitable on the top end, but not necessarily once you incorporate all of your costs of running them, costs of supporting them, then it may actually make sense to look at standardizing on solutions that are seem to be automated and actually driving efficiencies and hidden efficiencies. It's understanding, like, where do you sit today, and I think it's important to understand what are your KPIs and what are your figures today? So what is best practice for your particular business, your industry, for the maturity of your business? Are you starting out? Are you 5, 10, 50 man? And then look at what do we need to put in place to be best in class for the business that we're operating in. And you may identify that actually my technicians could be better utilized. It could be that certain contracts are not particularly profitable. It could be that your pricing strategy is often where it needs to be. So I think having a benchmark of where you're sitting today compared to your peers, compared to best in class, and then looking at what tweaks and buttons can we push in order to actually, over time, improve those different metrics to become best in class.
That's a great answer, and something that I was going to jump into later on was, what are the metrics that we should measure ourselves by? And I know in the 15 years that I've been doing the MSP game, and actually even before it was MSP, because I think that's really only the last 8 or 9 years in New Zealand, was understanding, service profitability. So, if it's MSP bundle, we had one called the Essentials, which just had sort of 3 or 4 products in it. Then we loaded on some time for the amount of people and the amount of tickets that they were going to get for each month for the amount of people there are. And we knew that roughly because we had X amount of people we were looking after, and on average we had 0.78 or something of a ticket would come in per person. So we can multiply that against the hourly rate of the technician to be looking after it, and so you can add that overhead, and then you fully loaded some overhead on from all your offices and all that type of thing.
Right.
You end up with a service profitability that, we're charging $115. We know it costs us $92.47 on any given rough time. Therefore, we've got all those costs hidden inside there. If we add going more that, and then that if anyone's trying to, discount it below, for argument's sake, $105, it's just not worth the effort. And then you do the same thing for your Essentials Plus and then your premium product, and really understand exactly how that lays in, right? So knowing your numbers it's got to be key. I know that we're at Zen Contract, we're looking to release a bit of a cheat sheet or an ebook on the top 10 things that should be measured in your MSP, and tickets per person being managed is probably one of them. Time for ticket resolution is the other one. I'm not going to list them all off here because it will stop the ebook having to be released later on, clearly. But knowing those things and be able to reverse engineer, like you said, the numbers. And once you've got a grasp of that, then using tools like Zen Contract and maybe Cloud Olive and a few others to really go and dive into those things and get those efficiencies that you're talking about.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And I would say identify what matters and measure what matters, and be consistent in your measuring, and measure according to what some peers are doing. So join peer groups if they do exist. The other thing I would say where it's more important to be doing this today than it ever has been is the amount of complexity of solutions, variety of offerings that an MSP has to take to market means that there's a whole variety of different tools, and integrating them all together and having to work out of multiple different systems is an efficiency that a lot of immature MSPs don't necessarily think about. And again, like I mentioned, on the top end, it seems profitable, but if you're having to sit there and actually create contracts and write terms and conditions and then integrate that in, and then have a different way of tracking that against every single customer that you've got, all of a sudden any profit you've made on the top end is eaten away. So it's understanding what matters, and then it's looking at solutions that are actually going to automate and drive efficiencies in that back end, so that you can really just focus on what does matter and differentiating yourself in the market.
I think it's worthwhile for the people listening to understand that this is a start of a journey. Like, you could be listening to this and going, oh my God, I don't have a lot of time to understand all that stuff or where I am here. I'm just drinking from the fire hose and figuring out how I'm going to do all the managed services tickets that need to be done for tomorrow. But you just pick one little thing, and it might be, I need to understand the cost of my antivirus and my RMM tool and my that. There's probably an hour's work you can go and find those things out, and then reverse engineer against your bundle to make sure that you're actually charging enough.
it is, like you said, it is a journey. So I think that if you are serious about looking at streamlining and optimizing your business, you have to have that mindset that I need to invest in order to optimize. And that's both tools and it's also education as well.
Like you said at the top of the recording is, what are we all doing this for? What's the why? The why is that we've got a working group to get more efficient, and the business benefits. We don't necessarily benefit, but Mr. Boss Man's going to throw us a big party if we, optimize X, Y, and Z, or go to Fiji or something, whatever it is.
Absolutely, and that ties, I think, also to one of the questions we might get onto in terms of leadership style and management style. And I've always been a firm believer is being transparent with goals and setting those big, hairy, audacious goals and sharing them and having a top-down approach, saying, this is the direction that we're going in. Like, this is our goal and this is our stretch goal. And if we hit our goal, we're going to celebrate. And if we hit our stretch goal, we're really going to celebrate. And there's going to be a real incentive in there for the entire organization. And I've come from a sales leadership side, but I think it's really important to encompass all aspects of the business.
100%. And so we had a really transparent, open goal to get from, X amount of monthly recurring margin. And we wanted to increase that by, I think it was about 27%. And we achieved that over the course of a year. How did we achieve that? Was getting every single person in the business aligned with what that goal is, from the admin assistant to the person that was doing the tickets and everyone had a part to play. We actually mapped it all out as to how are you involved in this?
Yeah.
If you're doing the tickets really well, then we don't get any churn. So our MRM does not go down, right?
Yeah.
If in the admin and assistant side of things, if your level of communication is really, really, really high, we're always billing people on time, we're never having to rebill them, and you're working all of that stuff out, the relationship's great, it adds to zero churn. But also then it gives our ability to sell more and upwards, because we're talking about how great our admin is and how easy we are to do business with, right? The salespeople, that's reasonably self-explanatory. They had to sell more. And then the engineers had to come up with new products and new and better ways of doing solutions so we could cross-sell and upsell our existing client base. And we mapped all that out. And the powerful nature that you get with everyone aligning to a singular goal is, I think it's what we all aspire to, as be part of a team, because it's such a good, fun, fizzing vibe.
Yeah.
But if you take,
I think I've been to your offices a couple of times, and I noticed when I walked in that there was a sense of electricity in the office, where everyone was working as a team and everyone was excited on the journey that they were on. And I think that is a little bit unique. And a lot of MSPs I've seen is you walk into the office and, heads down and everyone's in their compartment doing what they need to do. And you don't necessarily get that feeling that there is a unity in the goal setting. So that would be something I would encourage all business owners to think about, is how can we collectively come together for that unified goal and incorporate cross-functional wins and targets.
Yeah, and it can be stepped along the way, right? If we get to 30% of our total goal, then we're all having Subway for lunch. If we're getting to 50%, then we're all getting a cocktail kit. It might be at home or whatever, and doing cocktails online, because I know a lot of people are still working remote. Whatever those things, it doesn't have to be. Part of the fun is the journey, isn't it? It's not necessarily the one big destination. I mean, don't get me wrong, the destination is probably going to be a lot of fun if you map it out right and you go big, and you should go big. You just have to reverse engineer the maths so that it's still beneficial to the business.
Absolutely.
We took the whole team to Fiji, right? So the whole company, and yes, it was incredibly expensive, and it was probably a little bit flippant. Hopefully it was pre-pandemic times, but we reverse engineered the maths that the business was better off for the expense inside of 4 weeks. And we figured that was worthwhile and creating lasting memories and making their goal attractive enough that everyone would go after it. So sounds a little bit irresponsible for the shareholders, but it was a hell of a good return. And I know firsthand that the old, when you were at Datto, spending a little bit of money to get an outcome wasn't really a problem.
No, it wasn't. And On the vendor land, I've always admitted that it's a higher margin selling software than it is necessarily services, but the same philosophy applies, and reverse engineering and baking in the cost of that trip to Fiji, or it could be a trip to Melbourne, it could be to Queenstown, wherever, it could be a night out. It's a rounding error in the value that is created if designed effectively.
And so when you're hiring for people, in your high performing teams, and I know you can lean back on your data experience and whatever you're going to go and do in the future, is there a particular process that you go through to find particularly good people?
I break it down into what I look for in a salesperson, and also just what I look for in a holistic non-sales related person or role as well. So in a sales role, particularly junior ones, I'm not looking for experience. I'm looking for, is this person intelligent? Can they learn things quickly? It's new technology, it's tech, it's complicated. I need them to pick that up quickly. Are they emotionally intelligent? Can they build rapport quickly? Do I have a good connection with them? Are they driven? And I look for signs in their eyes. I want to see them get excited on that call. I want to see them get passionate about something in particular, because I want them to get passionate about my solutions as well. Are they going to be a cultural fit for our business? And are they coachable? Coachability is something which I've always looked for in hires, because you may be bright and know how to do things, but you know how to do things the data way or in your organizational way, and they need to be able to take that feedback and adapt.
You can, during the hiring process, you can identify relatively quickly if someone's on board with that journey and that vision. You can see a little bit of a sparkle in their eyes, probably not just because they're sitting in front of you, Jimmy, but is it you can see as you're articulating it, is that they're nodding and being generally pleased with what they're hearing, and they're getting on board with it. But yeah, that side of things really drags out what they call superfluous effort. It's a lot more than the 8 till 5 or the 9 till 5, and people are doing things outside of it. They're engaging with social interactions. They're really enjoying the team vibe. It's a massive upward spiral, isn't it? And that's not just in, like you say, it's not just in sales capacities or outward gregarious people. It's also the shy ones. They turn up to functions when they normally wouldn't. They'll be there early in the morning, standing around the water cooler so they can have some conversations where normally they wouldn't. They'd be with, on their desk with headphones and things. So creating that type of culture, I think, is exactly what you said. So I remember my old business mentor Hugh Barrett used to run New Zealand's biggest bank, used to tell me about hiring for fit and then train for skill. And that's exactly what you're saying, is that if you've got those core ingredients, you're going to end up with a pretty nice cake, regardless of what flavor it is.
Absolutely. You can test people in the interview process. I don't like the typical interview questions, but if you want to see how someone receives feedback, is correct someone, is something they've said, you're nearly correct, but actually this is our approach, and you can watch how they respond to you. And if you can see they get a bit on edge, that they don't like they've been corrected, and that's a sign that they're perhaps not overly coachable. If you say, hey, we're going to need you to probably come in on a Saturday morning to complete some work, if they go, ooh, that's not for me, then even if you're not really going to do that, but if they're like, yeah, sure, if you want me to come in Saturday, no problem, that's easy, then that's like, you're probably not going to do that, but you're just watching how they interact with that particular that question.
What's some of the technologies that you've seen really advance the MSP during the last sort of 2 years? I know we're changing tack from the management styles, but
yeah, like in terms of if I go back a few years and we look at traditional managed services, you sell a fixed fee service for a monthly or a set of deliverables, and you charge a monthly fixed fee. You've got profit, you've got your top line profit, and and it still exists today is critically important, is having technology that automates as much of that in the backhand. And that's one of the reasons Datto was and is and always will be really effective for those environments where you're looking to just completely automate a lot of the traditional manual checks that get put in place. And that's important when you're looking at a lot of different stacks in places, is how much is automated versus manual. The next piece is how much is integrated into your PSA as well. So if you could have really good standalone solutions that don't integrate, then that's going to be potentially a problem. And you've got a couple of different philosophies of running an MSP. You've got one which is going to go, I want absolutely best in class for every single product, and I don't care if it integrates. Well, that's going to be a different pricing strategy for those that say, hey, I'm going to deliver really good quality solutions and it's completely integrated into my PSA and my core platforms. And actually, that's probably a more scalable manner. So those are things to think about, is integrating into your PSA, and I think that's got to be absolutely critical. The piece which I've been monitoring the market a little bit, I see popping up is there's all of a sudden this lens been put on to, hang on a second, I'm losing a lot of revenue in reconciling and the billing piece for my customers. So if I'm buying licenses from a security vendor from Microsoft, and or backup for 365 example, and I'm selling them on to my client, and they go up and down, is how do I actually manage that consumption-based billing into my PSA? So there's a number of companies, there's this Cloud Olive that we mentioned, there's Gradient in the US that have popped up. There's other organizations that are plugging a big pain point, and it's not a known pain point, but it's a pain point where if you actually put a magnifying glass on and say, hey, how much time are you spending, or how much revenue are you losing? Because you're forgetting to on-bill this because it's the vendor's charging you, you're not passing that on. That's a massive piece of value. So I've seen a big uptick, like in the likes of Cloud Olive, that have popped up in the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with that. Actually, is that, I mean, obviously that's where Zen Contract's playing, is in the automation of that compliance stuff that we have to have, i.e. signatures on paper, so we know how to do business with each other. But then one step back is, and investigating in, right, we sold these line items, are they profitable or not? And I mean, it should be a top up calculation, like we said earlier on, around understand your costs and then add a margin to them. But then well, all MSPs will identify with this, is that so much revenue comes in at each month, and according to our calculations there should be this much margin. Well, where the is it? Because I'm not seeing it in my bank account. And it's these types of things that really need to be uncovered. Like, well, I didn't charge 14 of those WebRoot licenses, even though they're relatively cheap. They weren't charged onto that customer because originally charging them for 70, but they've got 84 licenses. I've consumed them over there. I'm paying for them, but I haven't charged the customer. And it's a scenario around revenue leakage that I know, Adam and the team at Cloud Olive and also the billable team, it's an area that they're really getting focused on. But it requires the workflow from beginning to end, eventually, like you say, to be automated, so you can get out of the reads and concentrate on supplying a real value add service, which is the securitization of the small medium enterprise, thought leadership, helping them automate their business processes with the tools that you have at your disposal, and really getting out front from just supplying services or stagnant based knitting and plumbing. We've evolved a hell of a lot in the last 5 years, and we're infinitely better than at doing that stuff than where we were, but there's still a long way to go, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think that there's, on top of that, it's the commoditization of MSP as well. So the traditional NOC help desk service is becoming commoditized, and with that comes pricing pressure, and it's the requirement to optimize, automate as much as you can, and again, look at specialization. Like you said, I think security is a really interesting spot, and becoming a specialist in things like the NIST framework, where you can actually use compliance and frameworks to differentiate yourself and your engagements, and use that to deliver a premium service.
It's interesting, that model. Like, I mean, I'd almost say, so certainly the MSP that we had Base 2, we would supply security services to this level and implement them, monitor them, manage them, make sure that they were doing their job. They were the layered approach, not necessarily incident response, but certainly we would be first responders if there was a problem. But then we'd partner with really high-end, proper, specific security organizations that had, this many CISSPs, this many CISOs, so they really knew the game, and they were just doing this stuff all the time. And then get them to audit our services to see if they were up to scratch, give them almost a certificate of compliance from time to time at ours and our customers' expense, right? So we'd share that cost across our customers, but we'd bear some of the costs as well. And then partner with them to do audits on the clients and take a little bit of a margin on those too. They might do a $20,000 audit on a business for SOC 2 compliance or whatever it is, up to a particular level, and partner with them that way, you know. So I think that way you're getting access to a lot of expertise and security skill, and also a little bit of ability to be able to remain slightly at arm's length, because, you know, you had someone else audit your services. We think we're doing the best thing, because trust me, you can't just go straight from MSP to MSSP overnight and with any sort of authority just by hiring and buying a few products. You still need to have some skills.
And it is a slight conflict of interest to say that you're a security expert and everything we're doing is fantastic without bringing in a third party to validate and certify that as well.
Cool. Well, look, it's been awesome to see your face and see obviously that you're into cycling over your left shoulder there.
I think the term is all the gear, no idea. Yeah, I've got the bike there. I'm trying to do a little bit of calorie control at the moment, and it helps not being on the road. But I'm sure that that's going to change pretty soon. So. Yeah,
I don't know whether it has helped me at all not being on the road, because I'm literally only about 2'4" from my fridge, and it seems like I've almost got a bungee cord that keeps pulling me back there every time that I walk away from it. Cool. Right, Jamie. Well, thank you very much for your time and as always, your expertise. We look forward to speaking to you again soon, either on this podcast or off, and wherever you're going to pop up into the future. I'm sure they'll be lucky to have you, and thanks for all your time today.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Sharpie, and all the best to you and the team at Send Contract.
Cool.
Thanks. Take care.